Welcome back, children. We'll start a new chapter in SS. Again, this is the chapter from the genre of history. Chapter 8, Delhi during the medieval period. Let's begin with the chapter. The chapter starts with the understanding of the slave dynasty. The Delhi Sultanate was founded in the beginning of 13th century. So, the slave dynasty in the Delhi Sultanate started in 13th century. After the death of Ghori, once Ghori was dead, one of his loyal slaves became the commander and established the control over the throne of Delhi. So, what happened after the death of Ghori? One of his loyal slave, he took over the entire command on Delhi Sultanate and he became the commander and he established his throne in Delhi. Thus, the slave dynasty started ruling over Delhi. Though he faced many difficulties in establishing his power in India, he managed to provide a stable administration. He had started the construction of minas. Children, when we start any new thing, we definitely face many problems in doing those things. The same happened with him also. So, though he faced many issues in establishing his power, establishing his administration in Delhi, but with the passage of time he was successful enough and he provided a stable, consistent administration, and he also started the construction of minar. His son-in-law Iltutmish, who succeeded him, completed the construction of that minar. So, after him, his son-in-law Iltutmish, he took over the throne of Delhi and he constructed that minar. This minar, which came to be known as the famous Qutub Minar, the style in which Qutub Minar was constructed is a mixture of both Hindu and Muslim styles. This place was the capital during the Sultanate age. Now, the minar that we are talking about in this slide is the famous Qutub Minar, and the way it has been constructed, the style of its construction is a combination of both Hindu and Muslim style. And this place, the Qutub Minar, this place was considered as the capital during the Sultanate age. Iltutmish was also a slave in the beginning. He conquered many territories in India and made them a part of Delhi Sultanate. So, he is known as a founder of slave dynasty. In the beginning, Iltutmish was also a slave, but he conquered and bought many territories in the slave dynasty in his sultanate, and so he is considered to be a founder of the slave dynasty. His daughter Razia Sultan ascended the throne after his death in 1236 EC. Razia was the female ruler to rule over Delhi. So, after the death of Iltutmish, his daughter Razia Sultan, she became the king of this sultanate, and she was the first female ruler to rule over Delhi. See, we can see the picture of Razia Sultan in this slide, and the famous Qutub Minar, which was the capital during the Sultanate age. According to the historian of that time, Minaz-e-Siraz, Razia was more capable and efficient ruler than her brother. However, being a woman, she was not accepted as a ruler. Amir Umrao's disliked Razia as a ruler. Now, historians of that time, Minaz-e-Siraz, he said that she was very capable leader. She was very capable as a king of the Sultanate age, but she was not being liked as a ruler, and Amir Umrao's disliked her Razia as a ruler. Razia's rule came to an end due to the interference of Amirs. What happened that her rule came to an end because people of that time, it's very difficult for them to accept women as a king who is taking care of the entire kingdom. So, with the interference of Amirs, what happened? Razia's rule. There was a complete disorder in the Sultanate for 6 years after her death. At last, the Amir enthroned Nasiruddin, the son of Iltutmish. So, after her death, there was a complete disorder, mismanagement in her kingdom, and then after 6 years, after 6 years, what happened? That Nasiruddin, the son of Iltutmish, was enthroned for the slave dynasty. He ruled for 21 years. After his death, Ghiyazuddin Balban ascended the throne of Delhi. So after he ruled for 21 years, who? The son of Iltutmish. But after him, Ghiyazuddin Balban enthroned the ascended the throne of Delhi. Balban had been the Wazir of Nasiruddin. So Balban, who was Balban? Ghiyazuddin Balban, he was a Wazir of Nasiruddin for 20 years. He also ruled as a Sultan for 22 years. Now Nasiruddin, the son of Iltutmish, he ruled for 21 years. After his death, Ghiyazuddin Balban, who was the Wazir of Nasiruddin for 20 years, he became the king of the Sultanate and he became the Sultan and he ruled for 22 years. Okay. His descendants were very weak and the Khilji dynasty established the rule over Delhi. So what happened? This Balbans, Ghiyazuddin Balban's descendants were very weak in nature. They were not as powerful as him. So who took over the entire dynasty? The Khilji dynasty took over the entire Sultanate in Delhi. Now let's understand about Khilji dynasty. Within 4 years of Balban's death, the Khilji dynasty established its rule over Delhi. So what happens within the 4 years of his death, Balban's death, the Khilji dynasty took over and established his rule over Delhi. The Turk community which belonged to Khilji in Afghanistan was known as Khiljis. Now who are known as Khiljis? So the Turk community which is there in Afghanistan were known as Khiljis. Jalaluddin Khilji brought an end to the slave dynasty and in its place founded the Khilji dynasty. So who is Jalaluddin? You can see it in the picture. See, this Jalaluddin Khilji brought an end to the slave dynasty and he established Khilji dynasty. In 2096 CE, Alauddin Khilji, who was both his nephew and son-in-law, overthrew Jalaluddin and became the ruler of Delhi. Now this Jalaluddin Khilji who established the Khilji dynasty, his nephew and son-in-law, and his name is Alauddin Khilji. He overthrown Jalaluddin Khilji and he became the ruler of Delhi. So Jalaluddin was overthrown by Alauddin and he became the ruler of Delhi. He was very ambitious. Now this Alauddin Khilji was very ambitious. He controlled the interference of ulemas and umraos in the state administration. Alauddin Khilji framed strict laws to control prices. Now he stopped the interference of everyone in the administration and he created strict policies to control prices. Okay, he was very ambitious. Who? Alauddin Khilji. He was very ambitious in nature. The famous poet Amir Khusro, whose works are well known, adorn his court. Now there was a famous poet Amir Khusro in his court who is known for his work, was a part of his court. There were complete disorder in the kingdom after his death, and the Tughlaq dynasty established its power, replacing the Khilji dynasty. So after the death of Alauddin Khilji, there was a complete disorder in his kingdom and it becomes weakened in nature, and that's how the Tughlaq dynasty established its power, replacing the Khilji dynasty. Now in the next slide we will understand about the Tughlaq dynasty. The Tughlaq dynasty. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq founded the Tughlaq dynasty within 4 years after the death of Alauddin Khilji. Now Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, he established the Tughlaq dynasty within the 4 years after the death of Alauddin Khilji. मतलब 4 साल के भीतर ही, आफ्टर अलाउद्दीन खिलजी के डेथ के 4 साल के अंदर ही गियाजुद्दीन तुगलक ने अपनी डायनेस्टी एस्टैब्लिश कर ली. Dak Chowki, the postal services was started in his time. The letters were carried by the horse riders. The postmen were referred to as Halkaro at that time. So now he started a Dak Chowki, the postal service, and the postmen of those time were known as Halkaros. Muhammad Tughlaq became the Sultan after Ghiyasuddin. Many of the decisions that he took were criticized. Now what happened that Muhammad Tughlaq became the Sultan after the death of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, and many of his decisions of Muhammad Tughlaq were criticized. Among these, the two main plans were the transfer of capital from Delhi to Daulatabad and introducing the use of copper currency. So, the decisions of Muhammad Tughlaq which were criticized the most were one, he wanted to transfer the entire capital from Delhi to Daulatabad. Now, Daulatabad is a place, and introducing the use of copper currency. In those times, silver or gold were used as a currency, but he wanted to establish a copper currency. So, these decisions of Muhammad Tughlaq was criticized a lot. During Muhammad Tughlaq regime, Ibn Battuta, an African traveller from Tayangar belonging to the Hapsi tribe, visited India. So, during the time of Muhammad Tughlaq, Ibn Battuta, the African traveller from Tayangar who belongs to an Hapsi tribe, he visited India. Criticizing the Sultan's administration, he has written that Muhammad Shah's rule was an amalgamation of both good and bad administrative policies. Now, he says, this Ibn Battuta who visited from Africa, he said in his writings that the Muhammad Shah's rule was an amalgamation, was a combination. Okay, amalgamation means what? Was a combination of both good and bad administrative policies. So, what happened till now, we'll have a quick recap. We had this slave dynasty. Okay, now Iltutmish was considered to be the founder of the slave dynasty. After Iltutmish, his daughter Razia Sultan take over his throne in the slave dynasty, but she was not very liked by the people, Amir Umraos. So, what these Amirs do? After the death of Razia Sultan, the son of Iltutmish, Nasiruddin, was been enthroned as a king of Delhi. After Nasiruddin, his wazir, whose name was Ghiyasuddin Balban, okay, he was enthroned he was ascended on the throne of Delhi. His descendants were not very powerful in nature, so the slave dynasty came to an end, and Khilji dynasty took over the slave dynasty within the tenure of 4 years after the death of Ghiyasuddin Balban. Now, this Khilji dynasty was established by Jalaluddin Khilji. Okay, after the death of Jalaluddin Khilji established the Khilji dynasty, and his son-in-law and his nephew Alauddin Khilji has overthrown him, and he became the king of Khilji dynasty. After the death of Alauddin Khilji, there was a lot of chaos that was taking place in his kingdom, and within the tenure of 4 years, Tughlaq dynasty was established by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. After the death of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, the Tughlaq dynasty was again ascended by Muhammad Tughlaq, and Ibn Battuta, who travelled from Africa from Tayangar belonging to the Hapsi tribe during his regime of Muhammad Tughlaq, he said that the Sultanate was a combination of both, an amalgamation of both good and bad administrative policy. So, this is what we have learned till now. In the next part, we will move ahead and understand more about the Delhi during this period. Okay.